Welcome to She's Evolving. I'm Elena, a medical doctor specializing in endocrinology. For years, I've spent my days looking at blood work, hormones, and the physical markers of aging. But today, we aren't just talking about biology. We're talking about the soul of the woman behind the charts. We're talking about that quiet, sometimes nagging voice that asks, "Is this it? Is it too late to change the script?"
And I'm Julia, a clinical psychologist. My work is centered on the internal landscape, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and more importantly, who we are allowed to be. If you've ever looked in the mirror at 40, 45, or 50 and felt like you're standing at a crossroads, but your feet are glued to the floor by fear, then this episode is for you. We are here to dismantle the myth of the expiration date and talk about why the second half of life might just be the most fertile ground you've ever walked on. It's a powerful topic, Julia. I see so many women in my clinic who come in complaining of fatigue or brain fog, which are real physiological things. But as we talk, I realize that part of that heaviness comes from a belief that their best years are in the rearview mirror. They feel like they've already missed the boat on a new career, a new love, or even a new way of living. Exactly. It's that invisible weight of societal expectations. We're told that by 40, we should be settled. But what if settled actually feels like being stuck? Today, we're going to question those limiting beliefs. We're going to open up space for new beginnings. So grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. Transition music. A light swell of strings, transitioning into a more intimate conversational tone.
Goodbye for now, and remember, it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. See you soon.
You know, Julia, before we get into the science and the strategies, I want to be honest. Even as a doctor, even knowing what I know about the body's resilience, I hit 40 and felt a momentary panic. I remember sitting in my office, looking at my schedule for the next 20 years and thinking, am I just going to do this exact same thing until I retire? It wasn't that I didn't love medicine. It was the realization that I had built a life based on who I was at 25, and at 40, I was a completely different person.
That is so relatable, Elena. For me, the rethinking happened around 43. I had spent 2 decades building a reputation and a specific type of practice. But internally, I was craving something different. I felt a pull toward writing and public speaking, things that felt risky compared to the safety of my therapy room. I remember telling a friend, I think I want to start a podcast, and then immediately laughing and saying, but that's for 20-year-olds, right? Who wants to hear a middle-aged woman talk about evolution?
Oh, I remember that. And look at us now. But that fear is so real. It's the fear of being the oldest person in the room, whether it's going back to school, starting a business, or even starting a new fitness journey. We feel like we've missed the learning window.
And that's a narrative we need to break. We often grieve the time we wasted, which prevents us from using the time we have. I see women who stay in unfulfilling marriages or soul-crushing jobs because they feel they've already invested 20 years, so they might as well finish it out. It's what we call the sunk cost fallacy in psychology.
I see the physical toll of that staying put every day. The chronic stress of living a life that no longer fits you manifests as high cortisol, sleep disturbances, and inflammation. When you're living out of alignment with your current self, your body screams it. Starting over isn't just a luxury. For many women, it's a health necessity.
That's a profound way to look at it. It's not just about finding yourself, it's about saving yourself. Elena, from a medical perspective, why do we have this collective hallucination that after 40, our brains and bodies are just on a slow decline? Why do we think we can't learn new tricks?
It's such a persistent myth. For a long time, even in the medical community, we believed the brain was fixed after a certain age. But now we know about neuroplasticity. Your brain is capable of forming new neural pathways at 40, 60, even 80. In fact, in your 40s, your brain's bilateralization increases, meaning you start using both sides of the brain more effectively to solve problems. You actually have a more integrated perspective than a 20-year-old does.
I love that. So biologically, we are actually better equipped to handle complex changes than we were in our youth.
Absolutely. And while hormones like estrogen and progesterone are shifting, which can be a roller coaster, don't get me wrong, this shift also brings a certain clarity. Many researchers call it the menopausal zest. Once the biological drive to caretake everyone else starts to shift, many women feel a sudden surge of, "What about me?" That isn't a crisis, Julia. That's an awakening.
What about me? That phrase carries so much guilt for women. We've been conditioned to be the glue of the family, the supporters of careers, the nurturers of children. When a woman at 45 says, "I want to move to a different city," or "I want to switch from accounting to art," the world often views it as a midlife crisis. But in therapy, we often see it as the first time she's actually being honest. It's about shedding the shoulds. I remember a patient, let's call her Sarah. She was 48, a successful lawyer, but she was miserable. She had always wanted to work with plants, to do landscape design. She told me, "Elena, I'm too old to be a junior anything." That was her limiting belief. She felt she had to be at the top of a mountain she didn't even want to climb anymore. That's the identity foreclosure we talk about. We decide who we are early on, and we close the door on all other versions of ourselves. But the truth is, at 40, you likely have another 40 or 50 years of life left. That is a long time to live in a house that's too small for you. Think about that. If you were a 20-year-old, no one would tell you that the next 40 years are over. Yet at 40, we act like we're in the final act. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. If you start a new career at 42, you could easily practice that for 25 years. That's a whole lifetime of work. And you're bringing 20 years of soft skills to that new career. You have emotional intelligence, conflict resolution skills, and a level of self-awareness that a 22-year-old simply hasn't had the time to develop yet. You aren't starting from scratch. You're starting from experience.
Let's address some of the specific fears we hear from our listeners. We asked on social media what the biggest barrier to restarting was, and the #1 answer was, "I'm afraid I'll fail and look foolish." Julia, how do we handle the looking foolish part?
The ego problem. In our 20s, we're allowed to be messy. In our 40s, we feel we have a reputation to protect.
But here's the secret. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. Everyone is busy worrying about their own lives. The fear of looking foolish is really just the fear of losing control. To start over, you have to be willing to be a beginner again. You have to embrace the clunky phase. I felt that when I started learning about functional medicine and integrative health after 20 years of traditional practice. I had to sit in seminars where I was the one asking the dumb questions. It was humbling, but it was also incredibly energizing. It made me feel young because I was curious again. Curiosity is the antidote to aging. When you're curious, you're in a state of growth. When you think you know everything, you're in a state of decay. Another question we got was, is it too late to find love or change my relationship dynamics? From a hormonal standpoint, people think libido and attraction just die out. That's simply not true. While the spark might look different than it did at 19, the capacity for deep, intimate, and even adventurous connection is very much alive. In fact, many women report better intimacy in their 40s and 50s because they finally know their own bodies and aren't afraid to speak up.
And psychologically, you're no longer looking for someone to complete you or build a life from zero. You're looking for a partner to share a life with. That changes the stakes in a very healthy way. You're less likely to tolerate nonsense. If you're starting over in love at 40 or 50, you're doing it with a much sharper BS detector.
Exactly. And what about the "I'm too tired" excuse? I hear this a lot. Elena, I don't have the energy to start over. Tiredness is often emotional. We are tired because we are bored. We are tired because we are uninspired. I agree. Biologically, yes, we need to check your thyroid, your iron, your vitamin D, and your hormones. But once those are optimized, if you're still tired, it's often because your life is heavy. When women start doing something they love, something that makes them feel like themselves again, I see their energy levels skyrocket. It's like they've tapped into a hidden battery. It's the dopamine of the new. When we try something new, our brain releases dopamine, which is the molecule of motivation and reward. If your life is a repetitive loop of chores and obligations, your dopamine is flatlined. Starting something new, even something small, is like giving your brain a spark. So let's get practical. If a woman is listening to this right now and she's feeling that itch, that sense that she wants to pivot, but she's terrified, where does she start? The first step is to audit your internal dialogue.
Listen to the sentences that start with "I can't" or "It's too late." Write them down, literally. See them on paper. It's too late to become a yoga instructor. Then ask yourself, is this a fact or is this a feeling? Usually it's a feeling disguised as a fact.
And from my side, I'd say start with the physical foundation. You can't build a new life on a depleted body. If you want to start over, you need your brain and your adrenals on your side. Prioritize sleep, stabilize your blood sugar, and move your body. Not because you want to look younger, but because you want to feel capable. Strength training is huge for women over 40. When you feel physically strong, you start to feel mentally unstoppable. I love that connection. Physical strength leading to mental agency. My second tip would be the rule of small wins. Don't feel like you have to quit your job and move to Bali tomorrow. If you want to be a writer, write for 15 minutes a day. If you want to change your career, take one online course. Prove to your brain that you are a person who learns. And find your evolving tribe. Surround yourself with other women who are also questioning the status quo. If your current circle is constantly complaining about getting old and how everything hurts, it's going to be very hard for you to break free. Find the women who are starting businesses at 50, running marathons at 60, or picking up the guitar at 45. Yes, proximity is power. We need to see proof of concept. We need to see that it's being done. And we need to stop comparing our beginning to someone else's middle. If you're starting over at 40, don't compare yourself to the 22-year-old who has been doing it for 3 years. Compare yourself to the you of yesterday who was too afraid to try. This is so important. I think about the word rebirth. It's not always a pretty process. It's messy, it's loud, and it involves a lot of pressure. But on the other side of that pressure is a whole new world. And remember, the goal isn't to become your younger self. The goal is to become your truest self, the version of you that isn't performing for parents or society or a partner, the version of you that finally has the courage to say, "This is what I want." It's about expanding rather than declining. I always tell my patients, your 40s and 50s are the power years. You have the wisdom, you likely have more resources than you did in your 20s, and you finally have the perspective to know what really matters. There's a beautiful quote by George Eliot, "It is never too late to be what you might have been." I'd like to add to that, it is never too late to be what you are becoming. The music begins to swell softly, a warm and inspiring melody. As we wrap up this episode, I want you to take a moment and just listen to your body. Is there a part of you that felt a yes while we were talking? A little spark in your chest? A sense of excitement? That is your compass. Don't ignore it. Your age is not a cage, it's a platform. You've spent 40+ years gathering the materials to build something incredible. Don't let those materials go to waste just because you think you're running out of time. You have plenty of time. The only thing you don't have time for is living a life that isn't yours. Thank you for joining us today on She's Evolving. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who might need a little nudge to start her own new chapter. And don't forget to follow us and leave a review. We love hearing your stories of evolution. Remember, you aren't just getting older, you are becoming more you. See you in the next episode. Keep evolving. Music swells to a crescendo and then slowly fades out into a peaceful silence. In this section, Elena and Julia explore the invisible wall that women hit at 40. Elena describes the physiological shift where the body's emergency reserves, adrenals, start to show the wear and tear of 2 decades of doing it all. She explains that the fatigue women feel isn't just aging, it's a signal. Julia adds the psychological layer. The midlife transition is often mislabeled as a crisis. A crisis implies something is broken. A transition implies something is moving. They discuss the concept of the U-bend of happiness, a sociological phenomenon where happiness levels often dip in the 40s but rise significantly after 50. This gives the listener hope that the current heaviness is a temporary dip before a major ascent. The biology of belief, detailed breakdown. Elena goes deeper into the endocrinology of fear. When we are afraid of starting over, our body stays in a state of freeze. She explains how chronic high beta brainwaves, anxiety, prevent us from seeing creative solutions. To restart, we need to move into alpha and theta states, states of relaxation and intuition. Julia connects this to cognitive reframing. Instead of saying, I am too old, Julia suggests saying, I am seasoned. They discuss how language literally changes the chemistry of the brain. Elena shares a study about self-perception of aging, where people with a positive view of getting older lived on average 7.5 years longer than those with a negative view. Addressing the empty nest or stale career. Detailed breakdown.
They spend time talking about the specific life triggers for starting over. For many women, it's the children leaving home or reaching a ceiling at work. Julia speaks to the grief of the former self. You have to mourn the woman who was a mother of young children or a rising star in the firm before you can welcome the entrepreneur or the artist. They discuss the identity void, that scary space in between who you were and who you are becoming. Elena gives advice on how to manage the nervous system during this void period, using breath work and cold exposure to build resilience. The time horizon perspective. Detailed breakdown. Elena and Julia do a time audit. They ask the listener to imagine they will live to 90. If they are 45, they are exactly at the halfway point of their adult life. They compare this to a football game. The second half is where the game is won, where the strategy is refined, and where the most exciting plays happen. They dismantle the social clock, the idea that you must hit certain milestones by a certain age. They celebrate late bloomers and list famous women who didn't find their true calling until after 50, like Julia Child or Vera Wang. Closing thought reflection.
You know, Elena, another myth that I hear constantly in my office, and this one breaks my heart a little every time, is the idea that the train has already left the station. Women in their 40s and 50s often feel that if they haven't achieved a certain level of career success, found the perfect partner, or mastered a specific skill by now, they might as well just settle for what they have. There's this heavy, invisible pressure that after 40, we are just maintaining what's left rather than building something new. But from a psychological standpoint, this is the perfect time for a second act.
I couldn't agree more, Julia. And it's funny because people think the body just shuts down or loses its ability to adapt. From a biological perspective, yes, our hormones are shifting and our recovery time might be a bit longer than it was at 22. But our brains are actually more resilient in ways we don't give ourselves credit for. We have what we call crystallized intelligence. We have decades of patterns, data, and emotional regulation that we didn't have in our 20s. So when a woman says it's too late to learn a new language or too late to start a business, I always want to show her the data on neuroplasticity. Your brain is still a muscle, and at 45 or 50, it's a very experienced muscle.
Exactly. It's about shifting the narrative from loss to refinement. I often tell my patients to look at the sunk cost fallacy. We stay in jobs or relationships that don't serve us because we feel we've already invested 20 years into them. We think, if I leave now, those 20 years were wasted. But the truth is, staying for another 20 years just because you spent the first 20 there is the real waste. Starting over at 40 isn't about throwing away the past. It's about using the wisdom of those 40 years to make the next 40 actually worth living. It's about quality over quantity. That is so powerful. And let's talk about the libido of life. Not just sexual libido, but that fire to try something new. Many women find that once they navigate the initial hormonal storm of perimenopause, they hit a stage of incredible clarity. It's like the fog lifts. You stop caring so much about what the neighbors think or what society expects of a woman of a certain age. That hormonal shift can actually lead to a psychological liberation. You're no longer driven by the same biological urge to nurture everyone else at the expense of yourself. You start nurturing your own dreams. It's the age of no more excuses. I see so many women finally starting that bakery, or going back to law school, or even just setting boundaries with their families for the first time. And the question, is it too late, usually comes from a place of fear of judgment. We ask, is it too late, because we are afraid of looking foolish. We are afraid of being the oldest person in the room at a startup or a yoga teacher training. But Elena, isn't it true that being the oldest person in the room often means you're the one with the most perspective?
Absolutely. You bring a groundedness that the room needs. And for the women listening who feel physically tired, I want to remind you that fatigue isn't necessarily age.
Often, it's the weight of carrying everyone else's expectations. When you start restarting, when you start moving towards something that excites you, your biochemistry changes. Dopamine increases, your cortisol levels can actually stabilize because you're finding purpose, and that tired feeling starts to evaporate. It's amazing how much energy we find when we stop living a life that was designed for someone else.
That brings us to such a beautiful point for reflection. As we move toward the end of this conversation, I want every woman listening to take a deep breath. Think about one thing you've been telling yourself is too late for. Is it really too late? Or are you just afraid of the discomfort of being a beginner again? Because being a beginner at 40 or 50 is a superpower. It means you're still growing. It means you haven't given up on yourself. And remember, your body is your partner in this, not your enemy. It's changing, yes, but it's evolving to support this new version of you. Treat it with kindness, fuel it with what it needs, and listen to its signals. This isn't the sunset of your life. It's the beginning of your most authentic chapter. You have the experience, you have the wisdom, and now you have the permission from yourself to begin again.
What a beautiful way to wrap this up, Elena. To everyone listening, thank you for being part of this She's Evolving community. If this episode sparked a little flame of possibility in you, please share it. Send it to that friend who's been doubting her next move. Let's create a wave of women who aren't afraid to restart, no matter the number on the birthday cake. We are so glad you're here with us. Keep evolving, keep questioning those limits, and we will see you in the next episode.